Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Joe Theodore, and it's an honor to be here with you today. So I want to make a small talk. I want to share some insights on something I feel is actually quite serious to talk about when it comes to astrology, when it comes to our experience studying astrology, participating in its magic. The more we begin to understand what astrology is, the more we understand our soul contract / birth chart, the more we begin tracking and mapping what the current transits are in the sky, how that's affecting our daily life, and of course, once we know how to superimpose the current transits over our birth chart, like if you have any sort of astrology app, you can do that. That's how I do readings with people, of course. You put the birth chart into the program, and then you put another ring around the birth chart, and you can literally see where the planets are affecting your birth chart and how everything kind of lines up. And that's just like basic astrology, superimposing one-on-one. That's exactly how we know what planet is affecting what part of our life, right? What house topic, all that stuff. I'm sure many of you know that. But it's extremely common, and the real reason why I want to make this talk is I had a few comments over the months, not every time, most of your comments are beautiful, but I do notice how at times, and not even with the YouTube channel, just in general in my daily life as well, whoever I know who, I interact with in astrological, ways. When you get to know all of the intricacies and truth of astrology, and you really begin to track and map every single day of your life with what's going on week to week, all the stuff we do here, there can be a tendency to get very overwhelmed and put anxieties in places that don't necessarily need to be. I really hope that's making sense. Like when I first really started understanding astrology, there was a time where I would anticipate certain transits and already kind of paint a picture in my brain. And the reality was I wasn't even sure what the outcome was going to be, And that's why I always say, and especially in my classes, I'm not sure if any, I know a few of you personally who have taken them, but links down below to anything, you want to explore about me, my work, classes, pre-recorded classes, readings if you want to connect with me. But it's so easy to fall prey to things that haven't happened yet in a negative way. And what I say in my classes a lot is we'll always know the form and the energy that a transit will bring, but we will never know the details, ever. And some of these details aren't bad at all, even though a transit could seem like it could be the most challenging, Because sometimes when we see a challenging or bad transit, right? Like if Mars right now in Taurus was providing any very hard squares or oppositions to, let's say, like Pluto, right? One can say, hey, wow, that's, you can already create a story that like, oh my God, my life's going to suck for the next like month and a half, 2 months. Where the reality is you may just be witnessing things from other people, like nothing to do with your life. You may just see things play out in your life that don't really affect you, but you'll just notice a lot of Mars-Pluto square activity, in your life, but not necessarily affecting you personally, which is a lot easier to deal with in life, Like I know for me, the Pluto-Mars square, when Mars first ingressed, and actually a lot of us in the current transit in the sky have dealt with that Mars Pluto square. So that's actually a good example. But I was just referring to if your natal Pluto was being affected by the current Mars transit. But, the Mars Pluto square that just literally happened when Mars ingressed into Taurus, nothing personally happened to me, but I noticed a lot of people close to me having arguments. There was a lot of tension rising with other people's stuff. I almost got into a car accident, but I didn't. I heard about a couple of people who almost got in car accidents, but they didn't. But the fact that those potentials were in my reality and I was seeing them and hearing them, but it didn't directly affect me in any real, true, traumatic way. That's what I'm saying. But like before that transit happened, of course I can get into my head. I mean, luckily I know how to kind of master that stuff now, where I don't really, believe it or not, even as an astrologer, I don't let what potentially could happen in the astrology run my life anymore. Because there is a point where you're learning astrology, you're getting so invested, you're so in tune, and, where you can literally drive yourself crazy a little, because you're anticipating something and your expectations, even in an optimistic way, can sometimes fall short. Because the reality is not everything that goes on in astrology directly will affect us, but it will affect things that we observe in reality. So it's not just what happens to me, but it's us observing reality that the transits can manifest. So that's why, in truth, we should never get obsessed about this stuff. We shouldn't, be like preppers, like the prepper community on YouTube, people who prep, for doomsday. Sometimes I feel people who are super into astrology act like preppers, like every day of their life. And I'm just here to tell you, like, you shouldn't live your life that way. It's not healthy. It's like the weather. I use astrology like the weather. And of course, to help people understand their purpose, understand, who they are. People are confused about their life or why they are the way they are, or they want some clarity and healing on their past. Again, with my evolutionary and shamanic techniques, that's pretty much like what I love to do. I love helping people and consulting them in readings. That is really my number one. And teaching is now like my number two, of course, because I love to teach. But for me, getting into someone's life psychologically and spiritually is my passion for astrology. Tracking the weather, technically the transits, what will affect us, what's going on every week, the big profound moments, the new moons, the full moons. We will know the forms of what will manifest, but we will never know the details. So we shouldn't obsess, about things in a negative light, or even things that are too positive. Because that gives us a false sense of hope sometimes, when we really need to just be learning to live in the moment, and the whole point of astrology, and this is like the major part I also want to add to this conversation. The whole point of astrology is self-awareness, right? Self-awareness, so we can understand our weaknesses and strengths, so we can fulfill our destiny in the best possible way. Because we will never know the details of our destiny until life begins bringing the little small things that kind of accumulate over the years of our life, that kind of provide us the options to choose from. So we can know what direction to take in life, or what career path to pursue, or, should I pursue science or should I pursue poetry? Because, the birth chart can tell you where your strengths will be. And they can also tell you where your weaknesses are. And then they can also tell you where your serious sacred wounds are, which are pretty much your soul mission's journey to heal in this life. And in my upcoming masterclass, Mapping the Soul, which will be released probably by the weekend, I think, I talk a lot about healing and the nature of reality and God and consciousness and astrology, of course, and, how to use very intuitive techniques to pretty much help you understand your life and your journey and your past and your future. Because understanding thyself with your soul contract astrology birth chart, using that for whatever purpose you feel is right for your life. Hopefully, I think people should be using it for a tool of healing and understanding of themselves, Second, they should be using it for just the understanding of like checking the weather every day, where you just see where the moon is. You can kind of understand what the world's going through. It can help bring worldly events a little bit. You could feel a little bit at ease knowing that, wow, this stuff is kind of destined to happen, like kind of cool in a divine way. And then the third, aside from just using it as like a weather tool to kind of just know what kind of forms will exist energetically, but not the details. The third is the realization and enlightenment to know that your birth chart, your soul contract is meant to be transcended. Now, what does that mean? Your birth chart, yes, is etched in stone, a permanent soul contract, a mission statement that you most likely made yourself before incarnating. Now, what I see a lot in people in the astrology community, and of course I've had my faults here and I still deal with it, of course, because, if you have a debilitated planet that causes you suffering or has caused you kind of maybe a more difficult experience, if you're a Scorpio rising like me, or if you have your moon in the 8th house like me, it's very easy to kind of continually keep that truth in your consciousness and let it run your life. But the one thing we have to all understand about life is that our circumstances, I believe, are fated. They're determined to a degree. But I believe that our whole reason for being human is to transcend our limitations, to find the X factor in what is already set in stone, because there is a metaphysical and spiritual X factor to every one of us. And that X factor means just because you're a Scorpio rising doesn't mean your whole life needs to be suffering. You need to be aware of the more challenging parts of your soul contract, be aware of the challenges you've been through, and then you can learn how to track and map in the shamanic way that I teach in my upcoming class, masterclass, Mapping the Soul. And you can learn how to timeline shift and use things we've been through and things we're going through, and just some of the things about ourselves we can't necessarily change. And the acceptance of those things, and then making proper choices in our life that don't feed, for example, all of the Scorpio rising negative traits, because we can dwell on the negative aspects of things on the shadow part of our chart. We can say, I constantly say it's important to be aware of the shadow, to understand shadow work and what the shadow means for a zodiac sign or a planet or a transit that might be happening currently. But that doesn't mean you have to succumb to the shadow. Like, you don't just roll over and die, right? You transcend it. And that is part of the mission here on Earth in this incarnation, is to transcend fate. We can react by our own free will to anything in this life. You can feed the challenge more gasoline, or you can take a step back from the challenge, observe it peacefully, and over time, with a clear consciousness, do what you need to do to move away from the shadowy aspects of that and into a more holistic path moving forward. So transcending astrology is probably the ultimate lesson in astrology, in my opinion. Sorry, I'm just adjusting myself. Transcending astrology is like the master cheat code of what we're really here to do, right? Yes, fulfill a destiny. Yes, the soul contract is like a map. But at one point in your life, you need to throw the map away sometimes and just live your life. Now, this doesn't mean I'm saying give up astrology. Of course not. I'm an astrologer. Like, I need clients and we all need to learn this amazing stuff here. So astrology, we don't just throw it away and never use it. Even though some people find new spiritual paths and they go, you know what, I don't want to know what's going on anymore. I kind of feel peaceful on this new spiritual path and I don't want to even bother with astrology. That's totally fine. But astrology is a tool, and this tool must be used wisely and carefully. This tool is meant for self-awareness. This tool is meant for understanding the karmas of life, the events that happen in the collective and within our own personal life, to understand our past and our present, and to even see the future, but not to obsess about what's to come, because we will never know the details, only the form and the energies. Yes, we can meditate and manifest and co-create with astrology, but never expect that what you are desiring will come true. But the important thing is you put the intentions in for hopefully a evolutionary positive outcome, which is the most important thing. It's just the intention for positive outcomes, and to accept whatever that outcome is. And then over time, whatever you seem to find challenging, because I know a lot of people during the moon videos I've been doing, some people, because I tell some hard truths about some of the shadow aspects of the moon or any planet I will discuss. And a lot of people dwell on that. Not you guys, but I'm just saying generally in my experience doing astrology, people will dwell on like the negative part of their Scorpio moon experience and how that plagues their life and how that's such a bad part of their life. When in reality, there's so much power in a Scorpio moon that needs to be understood. And when you realize that power, you can start to dissolve actually some of the shadow stuff and, kind of keep it harnessed and transmuted, where it doesn't own your life. You don't have to stay in that negative cycle of, oh my God, I'm a Scorpio moon, so that means my entire life I feel depressed. Yeah, you might be prone to that feeling often, but the truth is you're not here to dwell and sink into the shadows of your birth chart. They're here for lessons for you. And transcending your soul contract is the ultimate spiritual mission of all human beings. But people who know astrology and can understand maybe these words I'm saying, have a much better chance at moving throughout your entire life and finding harmony and acceptance within your entire experience. Because I'm sorry to break it to you, we will suffer and struggle most of our life in some way, shape, or form. If not by, financial circumstances and just, the paths we choose in life, that maybe we have certain issues and setbacks and this, that, and the other thing, old age and sickness will get us in the end. So there will always be struggle and suffering. But that doesn't mean we have to dwell within that space. That just means we have to utilize every single tool we have to make accepting life and our reality, the dominant point here. And that by doing that, you ultimately will have a more harmonious experience. Like the yogis and the Zen Buddhist monks, for example, they don't just seem, they're peaceful because they've decided to be peaceful and dedicate their lives to a peaceful philosophy. And they're still very well aware of the suffering and the old age and sickness they will have, that will happen to them. But they have chosen to stay still in the mind. They have chosen to not get wrapped up in the external. And they've learned to use their darkness and transmute that in their meditation practices and keep that light glowing. And when we use astrology for a purpose similar to that, for self-awareness, for, being non-reactive when we want to be very reactive, and to take a bird's eye view and a step back to observe what's happening, and to embrace the beauty and embrace the good things that come to us, but to also be okay and accept when there's challenges, right? And when we do that, we transcend the astrology instead of letting the astrology own us. Because listen, the challenges and the hard things we go through in astrology are there to teach us. They're there. These are things we have allowed pre-birth to occur in this life. And that's really hard to say for sometimes to people, because I know people have been through a lot. But your soul wouldn't have enlisted to be a part of this if that wasn't the case. Which is why when I look at a soul contract and I see the challenges and I see the beauty, and when I see the the strengths and the weaknesses, I know a direction a life is supposed to be going in, and I know what needs to be worked on, and when what needs to be worked on is worked on and understood and accepted and healed to an extent, that's when I really, that's when transcending the soul contract birth chart, is most clear to me. Because that is when I read a chart, when I read someone's, soul contract with them. Not only am I observing their life, what their blueprint is for this life, not only am I observing what's going on now in their life because of the current transits in the sky, but I'm also seeing where they can transcend astrology itself, which is one of the most profound realizations I've ever had in astrology. And as a shamanic astrologer, evolutionary astrologer, that really is the point of it all, is to transcend the etched in stone soul contract. And in video game terms, that's how you beat the game. So I hope this made sense, guys. I might actually make a class on this because, this is really important for a lot of people to understand. A lot of people get very caught up and, I don't want to say a doom and gloom cycle with astrology, but it's almost like, oh my God, this is my fate. This is my, this, that, and the other thing. I'm never going to change this because this is my astrological fate. It's like, no, the whole point of this all is to transcend your fate, to achieve a destiny, Like, yes, your astrology chart will always be there, right? But we can transcend anything in this world. We really can. So if you do want to dive deeper, and I know many of you have not booked readings with me yet, which is fine. Of course it's fine. There's no pressure at all. But, this is what I'm most passionate about, is like really showing, people this stuff for themselves. So if there's anything you want to do, if you want to connect with me, take some of my classes, just everything's down below, guys. Just take a cruise, click around, explore. And, if not now, of course, maybe down in the future. So yeah, guys, that's all I have to say for you today. Sending you so much love, and I'll see you all next time.